But today, with that being said, we have someone in the studio that we've been wanting to talk to for a while. There's different ways I could introduce him. None of them will be the whole picture of who he really is. But more than anything, a lot of my elders have spoken good things about him, Mr. Buddy Gibson, about his story, about him growing up here in the barrios of Ventura County, in what was that, Tortilla Flats?
Tortilla Flats.
Tortilla Flats, yes. Right over here down the street. Growing up amongst the Chicanos and the Chumash relatives, that he was completely, immersed when they were growing up. There was no labels. There was no, hey, this person's that, this person's this. It was just that we're all growing up together. On top of that, he was also part of a big part of the music scene with his band here, once again in Ventura County and across California and other areas. So those are some things to highlight. And then, of course, he's a writer. He's written a couple of books. We'll be promoting it on the sidelines here where you could see it. But yeah, for all those reasons, we wanted to bring in Buddy Gibson to come and speak to you. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Wonderful, man. So tell us a little bit how you're doing today.
Well, it's been a busy day. I'm glad I was able to come in today with my busy schedule and things that I'm involved in the community and family. I have a pretty large family, and I know you've asked a couple of times for me to try and come in for the broadcast, and it looked like our time frames were always a little bit off, but I finally made up my mind. I said, you know what, the next person asks me to do something, I'm going to put you ahead of the game. So thanks, I decided to come in and let's do this.
Yeah. No, and like I said, we were talking about different things. So let's just start with what we first mentioned, you growing up in Tortilla Flats.
Okay, I'd like to throw a little bit of clarification on that, because Tortilla Flats was well known in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and the 60s.
Yeah. But
within Tortilla Flats, they had a community that laid within the perimeter of it, and I just call it the community. In fact, I didn't even know it was a community. I thought Tortilla Flats was really just Tortilla Flats, where I grew up and had fun, went to school with everybody, and just really enjoyed myself. Mm-hmm. But one day, later on, I read an article talking about the Negro Quarters. And I'm saying Negro Quarters, so I'm thinking about New Orleans.
Yeah.
And as I read the quarters, it made a comment that it was a area that was identified to separate the two and the three different classes within that area, and they call it the Negro Quarters, because I guess it was a stylish thing that came in from the development of the New Orleans area.
Yeah.
And so I locked in on that, and I decided as I grew older and knew quite a few of the people of the community, I decided to just go around to all the homes, not to physically knock on the door, but to identify the ones that I knew that were in the area and where they were located. Once I learned how to read a map, I actually developed my own hand-sketched map and started putting these houses down, and found out it was a community within a community. And the newspapers, local newspapers, picked it up and labeled it as the Negro Quarter area within Tortilla Flats. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm going to go with this. Mm-hmm. It's got to be something behind it, why they want to do that separation. And later, as I grew older, I found out that there was a thing they call redlining.
Uh-huh.
And redlining was something that I kind of looked up and found out it was a territorial or invisible line that was developed to be able to separate or to identify certain classes, especially here in Ventura County. Mm-hmm. So I went and just actually outlined with a red pencil the homes I knew where people were. I didn't go around each home. I went to the outside perimeter and developed a schematic, basically, of what I consider as being the Negro Quarters because of where people lived. And then I redlined it and found out over the years, as things were happening, to be changed, demolished, or whatever, for whatever reason, which they gave us at that time in the 60s when the 101 freeway was coming in.
Yeah.
So I had an employment with the Ventura County Engineering Department for the Public Works Department.
At this time, actually, can we acknowledge your wife? Because I know she's here in the studio. We should have done that at the beginning.
Sure.
I apologize.
Okay. I have in the next room, looking in, my lovely wife is Toby Brown Gibson. She's a retired Navy, serving 20 years in the U.S. Navy. And we met at the end of her career and hooked up, and we've been married for about 22 years now, hon. Yeah, about 22 years. And it's all been a lovely ride. I'm telling you, it's just been she's so thoughtful, and she's does a lot of work in the community. She's the secretary of one of the largest African American churches in the city of Oxnard, and I live in Oxnard and raised our kids between Ventura and Oxnard, and together, and her side of the family. So that's Miss Gibson.
And I also hear that she worked many years for the Performing Arts Center.
Oh yeah, about 15 years.
About 15 years. Yeah. Okay. So 15 years. But we just want to acknowledge and thank her for all that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of folks in the community that have seen her before.
Oh yeah, I still recognize her.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how I was like, I know you from somewhere.
Yeah.
So once again, I just wanted to acknowledge her for that and thank her for coming through, for supporting. I'm gonna turn off the AC real quick so we can continue.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right, and we're back. Please continue. You were speaking about the way you perceive things growing up, and I think I had mentioned that myself. Like, you know, as a youngster, the way you see things is different. You know, and you slowly catch on to certain things, and you're like, oh, okay. You know, we're not all seeing the same.
No, when I was growing up, I was very fortunate to have a grandfather, grandmother, father, mother, and a whole bunch of uncles and aunts. And because we lived within the Negro Quarter structure, we developed a family relationship that was very close and very protective. However, it just didn't stop there. We also had a Spanish or the Mexican family that we kind of like adopted because we were going to school together, playing with each other, and going to church with each other, having different types of parties and all kinds of developments and celebrations that are traditional from our different cultures. But it was blending. We'd always blended in with that flavor. So we could be on the back porch at night having a little cookout, and my uncles would be playing guitars, and they would be singing in Spanish, and the Spanish would be singing in English, and it was just so in fact, it was just like it was the norm. So we did not, it was a norm for us,
right.
But we just didn't think about a separation of thought.
Yeah.
We were just one big blended family. And to illustrate that, even as I was 7 years old, just starting to school and everything, I didn't realize how many grandmothers I had. And I had my biological grandmother, basically, but at the same time, I had every grandmother in the whole community of the Tortilla Flats and the Negro Quarters, because they all would know anything that was out of the norm for us before we even got home.
Yeah. So
our practices of being obedient, telling the truth, loving each other, was just paradise. And you know, this is one reason I kind of wrote a book about my life.
Yes.
Because I felt that people needed to know how do you visualize and something that had happened in the past that is no longer there to identify?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a struggle. So when I did this book, I found all these pictures over the years that I had actually adopted through various parts of the family. Mm-hmm. And you just don't look at my family in a picture. You always had another head or two would be out there trying to get into this picture. Because, I mean, you had the old Kodak films back then and camera. Yeah, it was. I mean, you just don't know. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And the Kodak was one of the early development of cameras. Uh-huh. So for me to still have original copies of photos of a lot of the people in the community and especially of my family up close is a blessing within itself, and it's like a documentary with it and a treasure that I have.
Definitely.
And I'm spending my times now after I wrote that first book to actually go beyond the word of speaking truth. Mm-hmm. I have a visual sighting that you can put with that written word, and then you know that is the truth. Because I'm finding out as I get older and get more out there in the community, the various historical sites are actually kind of destroying the past of African Americans and other races, cultural races of that, and misplacing things. So I'm trying to set the trend that bring out what you have, tell the story, and put a picture with it that happens to have old filming so that you can actually tell. The podcasting that we're at today is one of the treasures that's into the new technology. Don't let anyone fool you. I'm telling you, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And there's more people that are developing themselves and getting into that this program systems, which is great.
Well, to me, like I always wanted to be a writer, but I never felt that like the way I wrote was like legit enough to be recognized. So then that's why I started writing stories more and poems. But that's why I also, because I couldn't express myself in the right words and in the proper English, I would then do play. I work with play. So then theater and video documenting, that became my format. I'm like, if I can't write it that way, I could capture those images of what I'm trying to say and tell the story, or once again do a theater piece and try to do it that way. So once again, the idea of finding ways, and now you're speaking about the podcasting. To me, this is the podcasting is your ability to create your own news channel. And it's like, hey, what did you always want to see at the 5 o'clock news? And what was the reality of what we saw on the 5 o'clock news? And what is the reality they were watching on TV of what's happening in certain areas with people standing up for their constitutional rights? And how it's being depicted on the news is seen differently than the way we see it. So therefore, we have to create our own books, like you are doing. We have to create our own documentation, podcasts. To me, it's like an update. It's an updated talk radio. And then forever, we saw how talk radio was like not used in this way. So we're gaining that power. Go ahead.
Well, the power of the news on television is more theater to me, and you don't see the hurt, the pain that is basically generated, just like you see if somebody run into a wall with a car. Hey, did you see that flip when he flipped over and landed upside down?
Yeah.
Give me a break. That hurt. But they're not going to talk about the hurt. They're going to talk about how neat the car is laying on its side or upside down, but they lose the concept of the person that might have been in that car,
right? And
they don't go even a step further to say really what happened. Did they just drive into the wall, or did a person actually get clipped, or just what? So I'm finding over the years that the human element of feelings is being diminished to the point that, well, it wasn't me, so what? And I think it's terrible. I remember when I was a kid, and I had seen a dog get hit. Didn't kill the dog, but it got hit. And I felt so bad. I took a chance as a kid and ran out to the street to pick the dog up. Mm-hmm. And the dog was in so much pain that he bit me.
Yeah, yeah.
And now that was a lesson that I had. I says, I couldn't get it in my mind. Why would a dog bite me? And I was trying to help the dog. But I didn't consider the pain the dog was in.
Right.
I just looked at it, well, I've been taught the dog got hit.
Right.
And, and I think that's the way the society is turning now. Mm-hmm. I'm finding that they don't have the reality check of caring enough about people's feelings. Mm. Not that I'm saying that they try and hurt people and things. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But they're
empathy.
Yeah, the empathy concept is not there. Mm-hmm. It's more cosmetic. I could say that. So what? Mm-hmm. And I think we're being programmed now a lot to deal with the so what. Mm-hmm. But I'm not that way. I don't think about the so what, because so what puts you in a different level of concept to where you are going to be hurt.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and I don't mean by pain of shooting, but just of the conditioning of existence.
And your heart grows a little colder every time. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't recognize that, but it really does. Like in the whole concept of love, and I always go back to that because I think that's kind of like what's brought endless generations together. Has been a sense of community. Like community is like loving everybody in this picture and seeing how they're gonna work together.
Yeah, it was just like now that I think about it. I when I got married to my wife Toby, mm-hmm. she had a very large family, mm-hmm. and they're from North Carolina, mm-hmm. and that area out there from the South. Well, I wasn't from the South, I'm from the West. Mm-hmm. And out here in the West, I felt I had it made. I had a very tight-knit work family. Mm-hmm. My mother, grandparents, kids, first wife, which she passed away of cancer. But I had to move on, and when I met Toby. And I remember when I had to go through a old style routine where I told her I would like to marry you, for instance, I'm just saying, and that I'm going to go ask your mother, your father, your sisters, and your brothers. And if anyone said they weren't comfortable with me marrying you, we wouldn't get married, we just date. Mm-hmm. And they all told me one by one. I didn't put them together. I went one by one, said yes. So I felt...
That's beautiful.
Yeah. But see, I was taught the old school way, mm-hmm. and that's why I did it that way. Mm-hmm. And we've been together ever since. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I'm trying to say that people stray away from their biological and adopted families, mm-hmm. and they end up being alone. Mm-hmm. And the word alone also goes with the word lonely. Yeah. So, and you got to try and regroup you and find yourself again. And I think that this is what the different cultures do for me. Mm-hmm. I don't have a chosen culture that I deal with. As a kid, I came up with the being close to the river bottom, so I got involved with a lot of the Chumash kids, mm-hmm. that would stray down this way from wherever they came from. Mm-hmm. I guess how I related to it now, they had to be up somewhere around the area of the Chumash mm-hmm. casino that's mm-hmm. there now, but before they had a territory that they would explore. Mm-hmm. And as I got into a teenager, I remember meeting one of the Chumash young men, mm-hmm. which I didn't know he was Chumash, because to me, Chumash and the Mexican people looked identically the same to me.
Mm-hmm.
You just have, but you know your own culture, so they could divide and say, well, I'm Chumash.
Yeah.
But I grew up with a lot, and they taught me a lot of things, especially with the river.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how to do downscale hunting. Come home with a rabbit or squirrel or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always sneak away from home.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my very early teens, and I'd learned these skills, but I couldn't come back to my side of the culture until I knew how to get a rabbit. Where'd you get that rabbit? Or where'd you get that squirrel?
Man?
He was laying by the railroad track, and that was good enough, you know. My grandfather would always kind of peek over at me, and I felt that he knew you don't find rabbits laying by the railroad track. So anyway,
man, they were teaching you a thing or two.
Yeah, so I learned how to build a lot of different tools that would help me. And back in the day, they had, I guess they called them steelhead.
Uh-huh.
This steelhead trout.
Okay.
The big trout.
Yeah.
They were huge. I got pictures of a 6-foot man holding them under their gills with their tails hitting the ground.
That's a grub session.
Yeah, there was a lot of them. And one of our initiations as I grew up, they had it within the Tortilla Flats community, the river rats, they used to call them.
Mm-hmm.
And the river rats was a bunch of guys that they'd go down the river bottom. That's where they drink their little beers and stuff and be out of the way of the general public.
Yeah.
And have a ball. So I was able to become adopted as a second generation with my age group.
Mm-hmm.
Not the first generation. The first generation guys was like my uncles and their friends. And I'll never forget them in my heart because they were the ones that took the step forward out of the Tortilla Flats and Negro Quarters and went to war went to the military.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so great and honored to know that they volunteered to go and came back. And I know one of my friends that lived across the street, I went looking for him, different places, as I went around. Have you ever heard of Mr. Applegate or anything like that? His name is Kenneth Applegate. Well, one day I was over at the museum in Ventura, and they had veterans on the wall of local the local fellows that actually went overseas and fought in the war. And here he was under the section where he never came back.
Oh.
And I remember going outside and just crying. He was a good friend of mine that I actually went to school with, grew up with, lived across the street. And I got to thinking about that little thing they call second generation guys that kind of kept the things going because the guys were getting older. And so the next group we do, and they taught us a lot of things. And all of a sudden they're not just call the river rats of the community. They were called our brothers, our cousins, our nephews, It was just a beautiful thing. And they taught us how to fix cars and make our own skateboards, and that's all kinds of stuff. But we still had a lot of racism, tendencies in that community.